Mark was a ringleader of much of the events that happened around January 6th. He was somebody who was the president sought to find additional attorneys who gave advice different than White House counsel.
That was Mike Pence's campaign advisor, Mark Short. He was also the chief of staff for Mike Pence during the Trump administration, just throwing Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, under the bus. Now, Meadows has not been indicted in the federal case pertaining to the attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. However, he is one of the co-conspirators who has been indicted in the Georgia case having to do with attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. And what's interesting is how Short is not only throwing him under the bus, but making some pretty strong allegations against Meadows. And it makes me wonder, why wasn't he indicted in the federal case? I might have an answer for that. But first, let's watch more from Short.
There had been a lot of conversations leading up to this, and Mark was central to pulling together many of those who were, I think, whispering falsehoods into the president's ear. And so I think that when you look at the federal indictment and he's not in it, I think it is others on your previous panel questioned whether or not there's been involvement from Mark with the special counsel's office.
There's involvement with Mark and the special counsel. Like, definitely, I think Mark Meadows is cooperating with special counsel Jack Smith in the federal case. And the reason why I believe that is because A, he has not been indicted, and B, there have been some reports kind of percolating showing that he is saying things that contradict Donald Trump's defense. Certainly in the story that we covered recently having to do with Trump's handling of classified documents, we shared with you that Mark Meadows told Jack Smith that Trump never ordered those documents to be declassified. And again, that contradicts Trump, which tells me, or at least gives me and others a hint that he is in fact cooperating. But the situation in Georgia is different because Fani Willis did in fact indict Mark Meadows in that case. And it is interesting to see the kind of maneuvering he's engaging in or attempting to engage in order to essentially get to a place of immunity in that case. So as I said, Meadows is indicted in Georgia, and what he's trying to do is move that case to the federal courts. So far, 3 of the 19 defendants in the Georgia case or in the Georgia indictments have filed to move their case to the federal court, and that includes Mark Meadows. Also includes Jeffrey Clark, who's a former Justice Department official, and David Schaefer, a fake elector and former Georgia Republican Party chairman. So why do these 3 want to move their Georgia indictment to the federal courts? Well, get this, Meadows' attorneys, first off, have opposed any attempt to delay his August 28th hearing on this, so the other co-defendants can basically have their arguments heard simultaneously. He's like, no. I'm not with them. August 28th, I'm supposed to have my day to make my case to move this to the federal courts. I don't want anything to change. So they're kind of all throwing each other under the bus, which is kind of hilarious. Trump, who plans to surrender Thursday, meaning tomorrow, already tried a similar tactic in another state level indictment he's facing. The former president previously attempted to move his hush money criminal case in New York to federal court, but a judge rejected the bid. Trump is now appealing that decision. Now, Trump's efforts are clear, and what's motivating him, in my opinion, is also clear. First off, if Donald Trump happens to win the Republican nomination and wins another term as president, he would not be able to pardon himself in the Georgia investigation because he doesn't have the ability or the jurisdiction to do so when it comes to the state charges. However, it's a different story when it comes to federal court. So his motivations here, in my opinion, are pretty clear. But let's talk about the co-defendants here. Let's talk about Meadows and others who want to move their Georgia indictment to federal court. Why do they want to do it? Well, the first reason has to do with immunity. How does this work? Meadows is trying to move his Georgia case to federal court, arguing that he is immune because the allegations against him, his trip to Georgia following the 2020 election, and calls he organized between Trump and election officials was part of his job in the White House. So just to shed a little more light on what his role was, remember that damning phone call that Donald Trump made to Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State of Georgia, basically demanding that he find enough votes to change the election results from the state going to Biden to instead going to Trump? Well, it turns out that Mark Meadows, his chief of staff at the time, was on the phone call as that conversation happened. And he was also putting Trump in charge with attorneys who were spouting off about this fake elector scheme, trying to convince Trump to go along with it, allegedly. Now, in court filings, Meadows' lawyers argued that nothing Mr. Meadows is alleged in the indictment to have done is criminal per se, okay? Arranging Oval Office meetings, contacting state officials on the president's behalf, visiting a state government building, and setting up a phone call for the president. One would expect a chief of staff to the president of the United States to do these sorts of things. But there is a catch here, because legal experts say there is a difference between Meadows' duties as chief of staff in conducting official White House business versus what he was engaging in helping Trump out with his campaign to be president of the United States. There's a distinction there. One of the people making that argument is Jeffrey Cohen from Boston College Law School. He made that argument. I think that's a pretty decent argument. So we'll see whether or not Meadows is gonna have his way in getting his case moved from the state of Georgia to the federal courts. Now, the other reason why Meadows would want to do this is because of the jury pool. Apparently, they are hoping that the federal courts would have a far more favorable jury pool to select from. Legal experts note a federal trial would be heard by a different judge and a jury pool less filled with Democrats than one in the Georgia Fulton County. In Georgia, for instance, the jury pool would be selected from Fulton County, home to its capital city of Atlanta, which President Biden carried by 47 percentage points in 2020. But head out toward the suburbs, and a trial in federal court would lessen that advantage. Biden won the area covered by the US District Court for the Northern District of Georgia by only 7 percentage points, and the court's Atlanta division by 32 points in 2020, according to a review of state election data. But that doesn't even matter, because they don't want the case to be heard in Georgia. Again, they want to move this to federal court because they do think that they'll have a better chance at a jury pool that's a little more empathetic toward Donald Trump and his co-defendants. Now, reason 3, less humiliation, okay? Because the trial would not be televised or streamed in the federal courts. But the Fulton County court, they stream their trials, and they don't like that. I don't blame them, I wouldn't like it either, pretty embarrassing. The mugshots coming out, pretty embarrassing. And what I've seen from Fani Willis so far, the Fulton County District Attorney, is that she's not playing around. No preferential treatment. These co-defendants are being treated similar to other individuals who stand trial in Fulton County, Georgia. And so they don't want to deal with that streaming. They don't want to deal with it being televised. Maybe they saw, how the whole Amber Heard situation played out, and they don't want to be embarrassed. So they want to move the case. I don't know if it's going to play out the way that they're hoping. But again, August 28th, Mark Meadows is supposed to have this hearing, and we'll see what the outcome of that hearing will be. But really, really interesting to see how this is playing out in Georgia versus the federal case by special counsel Jack Smith.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.